So we're joining Dr. Emerson Eggrich, president of Love and Respect. And I'd like to just begin by asking you, Emerson, can you tell us how Love and Respect came about and what is Love and Respect?
Well, I pastored Trinity Church in East Lansing, Michigan, a college town church, for almost 20 years. And the call that was extended to me, the philosophy ministry, was for me to study the Bible 30 hours a week for the teaching ministry. And it was just a great run there. Sarah and I enjoyed that time thoroughly. And of course, that kind of time in Scripture allowed me to see some things. And I always say, it's not to be really too impressive. They just saw me as slow, so they gave me more time to study. But the great opportunity was to really focus. And I discovered something in the Bible that I hadn't really seen before, and I hadn't paid close attention. And it was on this issue of marriage in Ephesians 5. And the summary verse, Ephesians 5:33, says, a husband must love his wife, and a wife must respect her husband. And I knew the first part of that verse, Matt, wasn't controversial. Everybody taught, love your wife, happy wife, happy life. And the focus was always on loving your wife. And I realized, well, here's another section, though, on respect. And thought, well, that's not particularly a popular idea. Women say, I don't feel any respect for him. I'm not going to be hypocritical. He's not superior to me. I'm not inferior to him. I'm not going to give him license to do what he wants to do. I'm not going to lose a sense of myself or identity. Everybody knows respect must be earned and deserved. He hasn't earned it. He doesn't deserve it. I certainly not going to set the feminist movement back 50 years. I'm certainly not going to return to male patriarchy. I'm certainly not going to come in with pom-poms and just worship the guy. And I'm not going to subject myself to emotional abuse and become a doormat. But, other than these things, Dr. Emerson, I'm really open to hearing what you have to say about this. And women are never mean-spirited about this, but that was what I first, hit when we were presenting this, like this, because every man serves and dies for honor. We are highly motivated by issues of honor and respect. We live by an honor code. But the disconnect between what men feel and what women feel about men was light years. So I began to think, Lord, why have you revealed this? And then I realized in the Greek, no wife is commanded to agape love her husband. Only the husband is commanded to agape love. And Peter, in fact, in 1 Peter 3, says to the wives, you win your husband through respectful behavior. So both Paul and Peter talk about respect. They don't talk about loving a husband. Titus 2, the older women are to encourage the younger women to love their husbands. That's phileo, not fillet their husband, but Philadelphia, be his friend. Kind of a friendliness in the home. She becomes exhausted, worn out, and she becomes unfriendly toward the kids and toward her husband. But everybody knows that she loves them with agape. So as I began to tease out these scriptures, I began to realize there's something here. And I thought, what happens when a wife feels unloved? I'll bet she reacts in ways that feel disrespectful to her husband, and that's why the Lord reveals this. What happens when a husband feels disrespected? I'll bet he reacts in ways that feels unloving to her. And that's why God commands him to put on love. It is a divine command. There must be something within my nature that doesn't love Sarah, especially when I'm feeling disrespected. And there must be something in Sarah's nature that isn't respectful when she feels unloved. And so God commands me to put on love because I don't do it naturally when I feel disrespected. And he commands Sarah to put on respect because she doesn't do that naturally when she feels unloved. It's very natural for me to be unloving, or at least appear unloving. And it's very natural for her to appear disrespectful. In fact, women will say to me, I don't know what respect looks like. And I say, well, do you have disrespect down? Oh, yeah, I know how to do that. And isn't that interesting? We don't always know what love is, but I certainly know how to be unloving. But this gave birth to what I call the crazy cycle. Without love, she reacts without respect, and without respect, he reacts without love. Without love, she reacts without respect, and this baby starts to spin. And Matt, when we first discovered that and began to share it with people, people were overwhelmed, and this thing went viral. As you know, in 1999, we launched Love and Respect, and then in 2004, I wrote the book Love and Respect. And this thing just kind of exploded because the crazy cycle captures what most of us feel. Now, I always put in women need RESPECT and men need LOVE, but we've asked 7,000 people this question. When you're in a conflict with your spouse or significant other, do you feel unloved at that moment or disrespected? 83% of the men say they feel disrespected. 72% of the women say they feel unloved. So there's always exceptions to what I'm saying. But by and large, the felt need, not the true need, we all need love and respect equally. The true need is there. But the felt need during conflict is as different as pink is from blue. And if we don't understand that, then we will get on this crazy cycle and won't fully appreciate what's going on. So what we've been campaigning on over these last 2 decades is to help couples jump off the crazy cycle. Does that make sense?
It sure does. And we're going to unpack this in a great way, especially for couples that are going through this assessment. And so this crazy cycle, can you talk to me just a little bit more about what that is?
Well, what happens is we defensively react. I say she needs love like she needs air to breathe, and he needs respect like he needs air to breathe. And if we come to a point where we don't say that the man is narcissistic for this need, it would be very easy to applaud the wife's need for love as noble, but we know there are prima donnas out there. But we don't want to indict all femininity because there are prima donnas, nor do we want to indict males who have goodwill simply because there are narcissistic men out there. We have to come to a point where we trust that what Jesus said in Matthew 19:4, have you not read, he who made them from the beginning made them male and female. And as I point out, not wrong, just different. But what would be easy for us to do is dismiss the other as childish or as a prima donna or as narcissistic, because they tend to deflate over issues that you and I don't deflate over. So it's very easy for a husband to pass judgment on his wife. You ought not to feel unloved, or you ought not to feel disrespected. And if we pass that judgment on them, it usually doesn't work. It could be true. All of us at moments are selfish, and there are always going to be these moments, even in my relationship with Sarah, we get nasty. We just want to pout. We want to act like teenagers. We let our hair down. I'm not talking about those snapshot moments. I'm talking about this core issue. Does she need to be loved for who she is apart from her performance? Because she's made in the image of God. Does she need to know that you love her apart from her unlovable moments and even her disrespectful moments? And does he have a need to know that you respect who he is, made in the image of God, that you have an unconditional positive regard toward his spirit? You don't have contempt toward his deepest soul. You don't like what he did. You don't have respect for what he did. He doesn't have respect for what he did. But that's different than turning your guns toward his heart and saying, you're a man that I have nothing but contempt and disdain toward and disgust toward. And we assassinate character because something has happened in a behavior. We have to differentiate those two. But what happens in the crazy cycle is that she has this need for love like she needs air to breathe, and you step on her air hose innocently. Men are not getting up early in the morning trying to be unloving. But when we are, she's going to react because this is a core issue to her. Unfortunately, she reacts in a way that feels disrespectful to you. That's not her goal, though. And so, too, when you send a message of disrespect toward who he is as a human being, he's vulnerable to that. And he doesn't break down and cry. He will get angry. He'll withdraw. He'll stonewall. 85% of those who withdraw are the husbands. And when they feel provoked, their heartbeats get to 99 beats per minute, so they have to calm down. But they will disengage. They will not connect emotionally. And that feels extremely unloving to you as a woman. But he's not trying to be unloving. Again, he doesn't get up early in the morning and think of ways to be unloving. That's not his purpose. That's not his aim. So what happens is that we end up inadvertently stepping on the other's air hose. She needs love like she needs air to breathe. She has this love tank. He needs respect like he needs air to breathe. He has this respect tank, and it's connected by an air hose, and we step on it, and we see their spirit deflate. And when you see the spirit of your spouse deflate, in all likelihood, you're about to enter the crazy cycle. But at that moment, we're all tempted to go, oh, brother, now what did I say? Oh, this is all about you. We could be very dismissive. We could communicate they're childish and immature because we couldn't imagine deflating over that. But here's the deal. God has given us natural strengths in our area of gender, and he's allowed our spouse to have vulnerabilities. And we end up judging our spouse as immature when the truth is we don't struggle with the same issue they struggle with. I mean, if a couple can come to a point where they empathize with the other's vulnerability, they'll do well. But if they don't, they'll stay in this crazy cycle. And then it just gets offensive because she defensively is reacting when she feels unloved, but she appears offensive to him. So he doesn't hear the deeper cry of your heart for love. He only thinks you're sending a message. I don't respect who you are, bozo, you jerk, and we label. And so, too, when he feels disrespected, he's defensively protecting himself, but he will then, let's say, like withdraw to calm down. That shouts, "I don't love you." In fact, in the academic literature, it's described as an act of hostility from women. When a husband stonewalls and withdraws, it feels like an act of hostility, that he hates me. So then the crazy cycle starts to spin. Without love, she reacts without respect. Without respect, he reacts without love. But here's what's interesting. She has proof at 4 levels that she's right. She starts videotaping in pink. So from her perspective, something happens that she feels unloved. She does what she believes is the loving thing, and that's to move toward him, right? But usually it's what we call complaint or criticism. She will express a criticism or complaint, but she's trying to connect. She cares. She feels unloved. She tries to do the loving thing. And in that conversation, he says she's disrespecting him. And he walks off, and she feels even more loved. And she gets together with girlfriends, and she has 4 levels of proof. I felt unloved. I tried to do the loving thing. He told me I was disrespectful, and I felt even more unloved. And so there is this sense that, and they all have this pink huddle, that we're right. And they're not trying to be right. Women are not trying to be right. They're trying to connect. But they're baffled, and they've absolutely convinced themselves that men have serious problems at 4 levels. And what we're saying is, let's pull back from that, and let's try to unpack that. Men don't put a voice and vocabulary to it, but it's going to make perfect sense in what I'm about to say to them. He comes home, worked hard, comes in the door, whammo. Something is said to him comes at him sideways. It feels so disrespectful. His heartbeats get to 99 beats per minute. He starts to try to calm himself down because he's an honorable man, and that's what honorable men do. You do the respectful thing. And so he just disengages immediately. He's not going to go for this. And she tells him he's the most unloving person on the planet, and he feels even more disrespected. So when I help him unpack it, at 4 levels, he knows he's right. She dissed me out of the blue. I try to do the respectful thing, only to hear that I'm the most unloving human being on the planet, and I feel even more disrespected. Sick and tired. Sick and tired. What we're helping couples do is decode this, that the other is not trying to be unloving. The other is not trying to be disrespectful. But how do we deal with those moments when I feel unloved, when I feel disrespected? And how do I soften my reaction so that I don't keep spinning us and triggering the crazy cycle? And it is something that we have been helping thousands of couples, as well as you, Matt, to hop off that crazy cycle. Now, I always point out, we'll never get off the crazy cycle. Sarah and I get on it for a little bit every week. It's a matter of learning how to jump off it quicker, because there's no perfect relationship. But that, in essence, is what the crazy cycle is all about. And many people in academia have said, you captured the essence of male and female communication in that crazy cycle. And it's called an elegant theory, when it captures the essence of how men and women deal with moments of conflict.
Well, thank you. And I was just going to ask you this question, but I think you might have answered it. So for everyone going through this assessment that we have and refreshing their marriage, they might be wondering, are we the only ones that have this happening? Are we the only ones that go into this crazy cycle? Are we normal? Are we abnormal? Are we on an island by ourselves? And I think you've answered the question. Everybody experiences the crazy cycle. And I think we always will, even until we're dead. So the key isn't that we stop completely getting in the crazy cycle, because I don't think we can, but you said it. The key is what? Can you repeat that again?
Well, the key is to believe in the other's goodwill, that they are not intending to be unloving or disrespectful. And that is one of the major teachings that I brought over the years, which has really had a lot of traction. I didn't know how that teaching on goodwill would play. 1 Corinthians 7:33 and 34 says, the husband is concerned about how to please his wife, and the wife is concerned about how to please her husband. That neither, as I've said, get up early in the morning to think of ways to be unloving or disrespectful. But at the end of the day, there are moments when Sarah and I feel unloved and disrespected. So we have to ask ourselves, is this my ally or my enemy? Is there an intent here to do ill will and even evil will, or is there an intent basically of goodwill, although not necessarily good follow through? Now, I have to put a couple caveats. Some in our audience here, there are what we call clashing preferences, and there's another category called immoralities. And many of us just have clashing preferences. It's not a moral issue. Should we go tonight to get groceries or tomorrow morning? And we end up getting a major fight about, are we going to do it tonight? But that's not a moral issue, going to the grocery store. There's no scripture that says, thus saith the Lord, go to the grocery store on Tuesday night. This is what we call a preference. It's not right or wrong. It's just different. And most couples get on the clashing preference dynamic. And Sarah and I do, we just differ. Intrinsically, there's no evil here. We just don't agree. And then we both feel that we're right. And then this escalates and we start, saying, well, you're wrong. But these are innocent conflicts, if I could put it in that kind of a thing. There's no evil here.
Right.
Now, others might be saying, well, we're on the crazy cycle because he's committed adultery or she's committed adultery. And we get that. And now you're in crisis. But we point out that even though there is this immorality, if you begin to show hostility and contempt, which is the opposite of love and respect, that's the opposite of love and respect on steroids. When you consistently, not just a moment, we're all going to have moments. I'm talking about a pattern. When there is a pattern, when it becomes chronic hostility, chronic contempt, you'll destroy the relationship. You won't reconcile because no human being is designed to be intimate with someone who has hostility toward their spirit. No man, for instance, feels fond feelings of love and affection in his heart toward a woman he thinks despises who he is as a human being. We will protect ourselves from that. Now, this doesn't mean it's easy. It just means that this is what we've discovered. You're going to have to deal with, if you have hostility and contempt, how damaging that is to the relationship. And then there's another point. If you were listening to me describe the crazy cycle and you wanted then to turn to your spouse and say, that's exactly right. You're causing us to get on the crazy cycle, woman. You show me nothing but disrespect. Well, that's not true. You are the most unloving human being on the planet, and you're the one that's causing the crazy cycle. If in hearing the crazy cycle, you immediately began to process that information to use it against your spouse, and there will be moments when we all do that. But if that's your pattern, then I have to say, as your older brother, that's the reason you have problems in your relationship, probably. You're always assigning blame. You're always justifying yourself. So what you've got to do is work with us to believe that the way you're going to have influence and power isn't by always accusing your spouse of failing. But trust us here. We're going to give you tools that will enable you to influence the heart of your spouse. They will want to come under this influence. They will want to be motivated. They will want to be energized. But for a period of time, there will be pushback based on whatever serious conflict you've had. This isn't a 25-second remedy. But if you begin to move in this direction, God has designed it. He wouldn't tell you in Ephesians 5:33 to put on love and respect because he's some cosmic killjoy out to ruin your party. He's very interested in your marriage, and he's revealed this truth to you because it works. But if you're going to say the reason we have problems is because of the person I married, then you're really going to handcuff us here a little bit. So what you're going to have to do is trust us, even though there's fear. What usually drives that is fear. And there's also this mindset that you can continue to say negative things to your spouse to motivate them to be positive. And that's not going to work. So we have to revisit these foundational truths. And when you act on them and begin to plod, we have just found if there's any degree of goodwill, any degree of a desire in the other person to work on this relationship, it works. As my wife says, it takes work, but it works.
Emerson, I like what you said, and I feel like this is going to give a lot of hope that we're going to get in and out of the crazy cycle. But the key is to learn how to get out of it quicker and learn how to stay out of it and know when you're in it and know how to get out of it. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about when we talk about rounding the bases. It's going to help couples learn how to get out of it, how to stay out of it. But the big picture says you're going to end up there from time to time. And when you're there, do the best you can to get out as quickly as you can. I want to make one more point. I liked how you said you've got these differences versus moral failures. You used a different word. What was it?
Preferences.
Yeah, preferences versus moral failure. Here's my argument. If couples don't learn how to get out of that crazy cycle quicker and round the bases and score, over the long haul, the preferences, the lack of ability, couples' lack of ability to resolve those preferences and manage them and compromise and get around the bases, if we don't learn how to stay out of that crazy cycle or get out of it as much as possible over the long haul, our issues with just preferences can easily turn into moral failure. I often start interviewing couples who've had affairs or the big stuff. And if you go back and look, most of them have this long pattern of being in the crazy cycle and doing very little about it. And so what I want to do is encourage couples to know that when you learn how to round the bases and you learn how to be loving and respectful, you learn how to get out of the crazy cycle. It not only is a tremendous, vibrant way to get into a relationship that you want to be in, that you really fall in love again with each other, but it keeps you protected from moral failure. That's the deepest part that excites me for couples. What are your thoughts to that, Emerson?
No, I absolutely agree with that. And I think that, I always say when Sarah and I first married, I didn't say to her, Sarah, I hate you and you hate me, so let's get married. It doesn't go down that way. So there comes a moment when people get derailed. And, at the end of this whole thing, they can too often end up in the point you're making, immorality. But it doesn't start there. It doesn't just whammo, there's immorality. I believe that on that train track, we start having these crazy cycle moments, and we have honest misunderstandings, as I point out. There isn't evil will, there's not ill will. We look at the world through pink and blue. And what happens is we begin to just misunderstand each other. We don't understand how the other could withdraw and stonewall. 85% of men. Women cannot imagine why a man would just shut down and say, drop it, forget it. And men can't imagine why she tends to criticize and complain on an ongoing basis. Can we just drop some of this stuff? I mean, and we end up dismissing the other because we could not imagine conducting ourselves this way. And so there's no evil there. And we begin to argue over issues. Women tend to be a little bit less risky. With children, for instance, they're risk averse, whereas men tend to let him jump his, bike over the ramp. And so that in and of itself is not an evil situation. Right. We're less risk averse. I mean, we're a little bit more risky, and that's who men are. You can judge them all day long is wrong, but around the world, the research is in on this. But what happens then? Now we're in the backyard, and we get into a marital conflict because she's wanting the boy not to jump, and he's wanting the boy to jump, and now they're mad at each other, and now the rest of the evening they're steaming each other. And they start looking out the window thinking, we may have made a mistake in marrying each other here. And the point is, you didn't make a mistake. These are the common kinds of clashing preferences. She prefers that the boy not break his neck, and he prefers the boy to jump because he's not going to break his neck. He's going to break an arm at worst, but that's how he learns,
That's right.
And we're not overly concerned about it. So, but we end up dismissing the other. You're filled with fear. You're not going to let the boy, and you're going to kill our kid. And now we're off and running on the crazy cycle. And so what we want to help couples do is learn how to jump off of that, because as you point out, it's going to happen. And the other thing, as you're pointing out, if you don't deal with this, you'll begin to resent each other, and then you will become tempted by the neighbor, by the coworker, right. And you just let down your guard. And those of us who love God and Christ, now the call that's on our life will be completely halted, because now we have a different issue, and that's our relationship with Christ that's being undermined.
Well, it reminds me, Emerson, of a conference we did one time where we asked everyone to yell out what issues they had with their spouse. And we asked women to start. Pam and I had a whiteboard up on the stage, and we're like, ladies, just tell us, what is it that's causing the crazy cycle? What is it that's upsetting you with men or your husbands? And of course, we were having fun with it. And I tell you what, these women, they opened up. It was actually scary. And as they were yelling out these things, like you've heard them, everything you said, that our husbands, they're messy, or they leave their socks laying around, or you've heard this one, they leave the toilet seat up, or they had all these things. And Pam was writing down as fast as she could everything these women were saying that was irritating them and causing them frustration, and probably what's causing them to feel unloved. When they were done, I said, all right, guys, it's your turn. What is it that's upsetting you with your wives and with women? Just yell it out. And it went dead silent. These men didn't want to say one word. I'm like, come on, guys, don't be chickens. I said, this is a safe place where you can just share what's on your heart. Now, when you walk out of that back door, it's no longer safe, but it's safe in here. They started to open up, and they said all these little things, that these differences. And when we got done looking at what was on the whiteboard, we were astonished that none of it was immoral. It's exactly what you said, Emerson. All these little things, these inability to round the bases and to resolve the little things in a loving and respectful way is what creates the big problem.
Well, and let me just add, one of the reasons I'm excited for those of you who are new to Around the Bases, what we are going to help you with are dealing with these plethora of issues that arise in all relationships that aren't necessarily, they're not immoral issues. These are the daily kinds of things that irritate us with each other. And it's interesting, you both can be brain surgeons, and we can have this tremendous success. But I point out, I spoke to 5 NFL head football coaches that you would all know and their spouses for 3 hours in Florida a couple years back. And I said, the truth is we all act like teenagers in the home. We let down our hair with our spouse, even though we're very famous and well-known and have all these tremendous skills. There are moments when we act like teenagers with each other. Sarah and I do. Sarah chased me around the house once with my Love and Respect book saying, what would you say to a man who is treating his wife the way you're treating me right now? We have these moments. And so the point we want to make to you is that you and I are going to have these daily issues. But we can be very sophisticated, very successful, very skilled, but still in the home, we tend to need to revisit how we're going to resolve these clashing preferences, because over time, the best of people can become irritated and then resentful. We begin to feel devalued. We come across in a way that seems to degrade the other, and we begin to have this undercurrent of resentment toward each other. And we just don't enjoy being around each other. We're not friendly with each other. We look at each other. We may not be exploding, but there's that look. And so what we are all about is helping the best of us to be able to round the bases and to revisit how we're going to resolve specific issues. Because the truth is, all of us need these refresher courses. We need to be reminded, because over time we let down on some things. We take the other for granted. We kind of assume the other knows what we mean by what we say. But yet we know that the relationship isn't where it should be. And so what we're saying is, if you feel that way, then maybe you need to revisit some of the fundamentals and look again at what you used to do kind of just with excitement when you were in your courtship years, but then we drift away from that. And there's a price to pay when we do. So we are grateful that you are caring enough about your relationship to do the round the bases. And this is what we're going to be helping you with, dealing with these daily issues so that it doesn't lead down a course where you think to yourself, how did we get here?
Rounding the bases, to select an issue and to confirm the details around the issue with the right spirit, to offer solutions to the issue. It's kind of both of you bounce solutions off each other, and then you resolve your issue in a loving, respectful way. That is the ultimate measurable act of love and respect. And that's why we're going to keep bringing you back to that theme. The round the bases is the how-to. Love and respect is the message, but the baseball diamond, the round the bases, is the how-to. And Emerson and I don't just want to speak to you and then hope it all works. We want to empower you. Big difference. We want to empower you to spread your wings and do this without us in your life. That's what the baseball diamond does.
And let me add, I think trust is a different issue. Trust needs to be reestablished and re-earned. You give unconditional love and respect toward the spirit of the person. We're talking about unconditional love, unconditional respect. And Hosea was to go win his adulterous wife, Gomer, who was an adulteress. He was to love her. You go love a woman. That's unconditional love. He didn't love the adultery. He loved her in spite of the adultery. But that didn't mean that he was silent about the adultery. 1 Peter 3, verse 1 and 2, you win a disobedient husband through your respectful behavior. You don't respect his disobedience. You respectfully address those issues. And there is this demeanor that you have in your heart It's unconditional. You're going to be this type of person, whether he or she deserves it. This is unconditional. And that is very important. There's no condition, no circumstance, no situation that can get you to be unloving or disrespectful. But where they undermine trust, that has to be re-earned. If a person has a serious addiction with gambling or with spending or shopping or shopaholic, as we say, then the credit cards need to be taken. There needs to be some kind of accountability. There needs to be an intervention. That goes a little bit beyond the scope of what we're talking about. But it's important for you to know that, because as we talk about loving and respecting, it doesn't mean that suddenly you automatically trust as an evidence of your love and respect. An evidence of your love and respect is, I love you and respect you so much that it wouldn't be prudent for me to just blindly trust. As Reagan used to say, trust but verify. And I will verify because I love you. This is tough love. I will respect you. It's tough respect. We need to support one another here. You have a vulnerability. This is your undoing. So one of the things that you might want to just respond to at this point, Matt, is what about the issue of trust? And how do you respond to that person who says, but they've betrayed me. They violated our trust?
Well, I think that point rhymes true for every single segment that we've covered so far, and every segment we're going to cover, is that trust lost equals trust that must be earned back. And so here's what I would say. The number one way that you earn trust back, okay, is to fully engage in rounding the bases, like with real serious intent, and then follow through, okay? In other words, when you make your commitments and you round the bases and you score and you're like, honey, we've agreed to this, you wanted to do this, I wanted to do that, we've negotiated, we've agreed, we've landed the plane, now we've written it down, and so this is our new plan. What builds trust is over the course of the next 6 months or year, that thing you wrote down, you move the earth to try to follow through and make it happen. Now, are there times you're going to have relapses? Yes. Are there times you're going to fail your commitments? Yes. Are there times you need to renegotiate because that one thing that you both agreed to, it sort of revealed itself that it's not realistic. So you need to renegotiate. That's okay too. Here's what's not okay. It's not okay to not put effort into rounding the bases. And it's not okay to round the bases and score, but then don't honor your word, to not honor your commitment and show effort. Because a lack of effort is what will take away the trust. And so put your effort into it. And over time, the outcome is what's going to build trust. It's the effort. You mean it. You tried it. You're going to keep working on the marriage and the relationship. All of a sudden, trust completely comes back into the relationship. Would you add to that, Emerson?
Yeah, and I would add, and I think that's the strength of round the bases, because we have that negotiation and then the signing off. We agree together. We are trying to create win-win with your issue. It's something the two of you have to do. But then you basically commit to doing this. And here's a point that I've made to people through the years. The issue in and of itself that you've committed to is very important. But if you commit to that and then you just ignore it, you lie about that commitment, you end up doing just the opposite because you want your own way. I understand the power of selfishness, but here's what you need to understand. There's an unintended consequences to that. It's like an individual I once hired, and the issue was coming in at 9 in the morning. He agreed to that, but then he started coming in at 10. So I said, what's the deal? He said, well, I work best at nights. Can I come in at 10 and not at 9? I said, okay, I will give you grace. You can come in at 10. Then he started coming in at 11. And that was a pattern. So then I sat down and I said, this is no longer an issue of punctuality and time management. This is now an issue of integrity. Mm-hmm. This has now gone from punctuality, time management, to an issue of integrity. And the truth is, I can't trust you. And what happened is he put himself in a position where now I no longer had confidence in his character. So when you sign the commitment here and then you hedge on it and you do this again and again, you're putting your spouse in a position now. This is far more serious than the issue on the table. This is now about who you are and your character. And you have to ask yourself, How important is it that I be viewed as a person of honesty, of integrity, of commitment, of good faith effort? Because if that's not important to you, then why are you doing this? And what message are you sending to your children? This is really at a point now where it's far deeper than just about you getting your way. This is about who you are as a person. And I believe this can be a very powerful moment that God can speak to your heart about this. And you may have been this way since you were a teenager. And the Lord is saying, others of us were journaling, facing our sin, dealing with it. It's like I knew this guy says, I'm a 40-year-old man, but I'm really a 16-year-old in a 40-year-old body. I was a functional alcoholic beginning at 16, and I was an alcoholic until last year. So I never matured. I never dealt with the social issues that teenagers go through or collegiates go through. I was always drunk, and now I'm sober, and I'm reacting like a 15-year-old. And that's because he didn't do the work that the rest of us did. And some of you may be at a point now where this is a self-revelation, self-discovery, and you don't like what you see, and it feels very unfair. Well, the rest of us were suffering, though, years earlier. And this is the moment for you to step back and say, it's time for me now to take a hard look at myself. And this is far deeper than the issues that we're addressing around the basis. This is about who I am as a woman. This is about who I am as a man. And the question really is, how important is it to you to get it right?
Okay, I want to flip the narrative for a second and speak to the person that doesn't trust. Okay, so you just spoke to the person that broke trust. I now want to speak to the person that doesn't trust. And here it is. Try not to be judgmental, and don't let perfection be your measurement of trust. Meaning, if you see improvement in your spouse, if you see a pattern of improvement, yet they haven't quite gotten to the perfect spot. Like I promised Pam, I would pick up my clothes more often, and I would clean up the bathroom when I'm done, and that's an irritant to her. Well, if I failed 7 times a week, and after my commitment, we round the bases, we scored, and I made this commitment, and I do it 5 times out of the week instead of 7, be careful not to be contemptuous and to be hostile because I'm not perfect yet, because that will push me back. I'll rebel, and I'll throw away the whole commitment because I'm being pommeled because I haven't got to that place of absolution quite yet. And so be careful to the person that doesn't trust, that you're not holding the bar so high that it's impossible for us to ever get to it. And I know, Emerson, you probably have a few thoughts on that too.
Well, yeah, and I have a whole teaching that I talk about it, and it's an acronym that I put together called TRUST, T-R-U-S-T, and particularly if it's an immoral situation where now it's beyond just picking up your socks, but he was picking up prostitutes, and now he's changed, he's confessed. Okay, so and she's saying, I don't know if I can trust him, but let's say years passed, he's been truthful, he's been remorseful, he's been understanding of her, very empathetic, he's got what I call kind of safeguards in place, and he's got third-party accountability, T-R-U-S-T. So has he been truthful? Has he been remorseful and repentant? Is he understanding of your vulnerabilities and he listens to you? And does he have safeguards in place? And does he have accountability to third party? If all of those in place, then you have an issue with trust. And just to your point, I mean, there comes a moment when no one's going to be perfect on the sock issue. So is there a good faith effort? There's a good faith effort. Don't demand perfection. You're simply because you're perfect in the domestic front on issues that are important to you. Men can live in a foxhole. And sometimes that's standard for the female that's just up here because she couldn't imagine not picking up the socks on those 2 other times. So that she begins to resent. There's just no buffer there. You've got to allow for, some grace here. But on the moral issues, this is very serious. But has he really done these? And if so, then there comes a moment when you need to risk again. Does that mean that he won't betray you again? There's never any perfect guarantee. Jesus had his Judas. But if those things are in place, then it is your issue now. You need to trust, but believe that doing that, love believes all things. You're not a fool for doing this. There's just no absolute guarantee that it's going to work out rosily. And if you then say, well, I'm going to protect myself from being hurt again by continuing to be suspicious and continue to call into question who he is as a person, and you do that, it's like the football team that says, on Saturday, we're probably going to get beat. So all week long, let's not work out hard. So then all week long, they don't practice hard. Come Saturday, they lose. And then they say, it's a good thing we didn't work out hard because we lost. Not thinking that because they didn't work out hard that they lost. And you think, well, I'm not going to trust lest I be hurt. But your distrust will end up undermining the relationship. And then you'll say, good thing I never did trust. You follow what I'm saying there?
I do, and I think that's powerful for all of us to remember. We all sin. We all fall short of God. We, to a degree, throughout our marriages, I think we all lose and gain trust back and forth for different reasons at different times. And so we all just have to operate it with as much grace as possible. And then I have this phrase that I really like to share. Here it is. It's the pattern that I want you to be more concerned about than the failure itself. And obviously, I'm not talking about moral, sinful, horrible betrayal failure. Like when it comes to affairs, it's not like I'm asking your partner to not cheat on you as much. And then you should celebrate that. Not at all. There's zero tolerance sin, right? There are some that zero tolerance, no negotiation whatsoever. But we're parking that for a second. And we're talking about the majority of our marriage issues. And so regarding the non-moral or even maybe the minor sinful things that we do to each other, what I'm looking for is a pattern of improvement. Has Pam improved? Yes. Then I should celebrate that and not hold it over her head where she's failed. And when it comes to money, has your partner shown effort? Have they put time into it? And do you see any kind of pattern whatsoever where they're trying to improve? If so, then don't throw them under the bus when they had that failure again. If there's no improvement, now you've got a deeper concern that you need to address, and that will affect your trust. So it's the pattern that I'm looking at more than the occasional failure. God bless you. We'll see you in the next segment.